This is Feedback with Nick Carter and Lori Majewski.
Hey, Tim, you with us?
I am.
Yes, let us say hello to Tim Pope, Director of Quality Music Projects, Documentaries, and Films. His latest is The Cure Anniversary 1978 to 2018 Live in Hyde Park, a title that just rolls off the tongue. Lori and I are huge fans, and we welcome you to the airwaves, sir.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. It is quite a catchy title, isn't it? I call it Anniversary. I think it's easier. But you did that very well. You did that without a breath.
I tried very hard, sir. Go ahead. First question to you.
That was very good. You don't have to call me sir. You can call me Lord.
You could call him Lord Pope. He is the Pope.
That's Lord Pope.
I like that.
The
I like
Pope.
that.
Well,
this is the radio station my friend Robert and Roger on the other day, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Volume.
I heard that. I heard that show.
Yes, Robert had to call in to correct Roger.
I heard, and I have to say, I had a quiet chuckle because I knew exactly what had happened.
Well, just remember, Robert's probably going to hear this too.
I know exactly what he's going to hear and what he's not going to hear.
So you watch yourself, son. You watch yourself then.
Oh.
Well, I didn't know I was being interviewed by what's the bloke in Mary Poppins? What's his name?
All right, go ahead.
What's his name? Dick Van Dyke. You did a fantastic Dick. So
thanks, mate. I do well with the dick. Go ahead.
up the apples and pears. Well, we don't want to go into that, but anyway.
Cockney rhyming slang for you right there.
Yeah.
So, Lord Pope, I want to say, first of all, as a Cure fan, I love this film. It is so beautiful, and July 11th, fans can see it. They're going to be able to see it in theaters. And the first thing I had to say is that I thought when I watched the beginning of this is that when the Cure take the stage at Hyde Park to play the first song, which of course is Plain Song, it is still very much daylight. And that's the most bizarre thing, because when we think of the Cure, we think of dark. It's almost like you could have staged it as at midnight. But I wonder if it was your idea, was it the Cure's idea? Because you don't usually get such a perfect summer's night in London.
Well, in the UK,
yes, and they're bathed in the most gorgeous golden light. I mean, was that a gift, or did you plan?
Of course it was a gift. And, I think Robert was quite anxious about it. I think he was because, But then, you see, it's not true what you say at all, because I made a film with them, a cinema film with them in 1987 called The Cure in Orange, which all the fans absolutely love. And if you think about that film, that similarly started, in the early evening as the sun was going down. So I also think there's something about the Cure's music. It isn't all gloom and doom and everything, as much as we all love that stuff, and I absolutely love that stuff. I think, there's an aspect to the Cure's work which is celebratory, and I think there's an aspect of it which is like the perfect summer's evening. They are the perfect band. So the story I set out to tell, in a way, with the film was, like the perfect evening with the Cure, the journey into the night as such. And I think Robert very carefully chose the order of the songs. He literally chose the order of the songs to suit that, and the screens and everything behind. So there's a sense of the light starting to work. And I think by the time we're getting to like a forest and things like that, it's getting darker at that point. So there's a kind of journey into the Cure. The Cure aren't just a night band. See, I disagree with that so strongly. Just like Heaven. I mean, and In Between Days, those are such up songs.
But the video Cure in Orange, which I love, is shadowy. I mean, I haven't seen it in quite a while, but I remember it to be quite shadowy. This is just, I mean, the golden, even Robert remarks, that he feels like he's going to dissolve because the sun is so bright.
That's him being ironic. That's a bit of Robert irony, I think. I'm not sure, or something that came into his head. I mean, probably the Cure in Orange looks like that, because in those days we probably couldn't afford the lights or something, so it probably looks slightly murky. I think it's interesting. So the Cure in Orange, which some people listening will know and others won't, and it is a firm fan favourite. And to me, it's kind of interesting that if right, I don't know if people know how films work, but films have a beginning, middle, and an end, okay? And they're broken down into act structures. So the thing that happens at the first act, about 20 minutes into a film, to me, that was like The Cure in Orange. It was like the moment. I happened to be there at the moment where the band were transforming to become what they became and went on that journey. And then similarly with this one, I think it's like the second act climax. It's like a line in the sand before they go on. I mean, Robert has now, as he told you on his radio broadcast, he told you that he's got this new album. I haven't heard any of it. He's told me about it. But it sounds like he's back to doom and gloom and 10-minute long songs. Fantastic. So I think this film that I've made, Anniversary, is like a turning point in The Cure's. It feels like that to me. Robert was very involved in this film, you know. He gets very involved in the minutiae of stuff, and it's been fantastic working with him again. I've loved it.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because I noticed the editing, and I wonder how important that was in this, because as great as The Cure are live, Lori and I have both seen them multiple times. If you're not there, it may not be the most exciting thing because they don't really do much or move much, except for Simon Gallup, who's running around the stage, you know, slinging the bass like he's playing.
Who's galloping around. Yeah. That's right. So let me tell you how I made this film. I basically, the day before this show, I was in most Cure fans' heaven. I sat with the band in a tiny, tiny, tiny room where they rehearsed the entire set for me, and I sat in the middle of the band. I sat between Reeves, Robert, with Jason to my right, and I listened to the entire show on headphones as they stood like 1 foot away from me. And you know, what you say is absolutely true, and this was the same when I made The Cure in Orange. No, they don't do much, but there's a lot of looks between them. And one of the things I can tell you about this band is they actually play this music. This is not recorded tapes. It's amazing and astounding they get this sound. But there's a lot of interplay that goes on between them, what with Simon running around. So I tried to really step out of the way of the band and actually show and lead us into the music. And that was the way I approached the film, if you like, I wanted to capture two things: the epic quality of the music. You know, no one sings like Robert, and when he sings again and again, you know, these amazing vocal moments. I think it's quite extraordinary. And there are these moments, and there's an epic quality to music, but there's also an intimate side to them, you know, where you catch those little looks and things. And that was the drama that I decided to focus into.
Well, can I follow up on that real fast? Because it's interesting. It's shot pretty straightforwardly until we get to
Correct.
If Only Tonight We Could Sleep, and you use sort of an obscured lens, not quite a fisheye, but similar. What was the impetus behind that effect for that song?
I think Robert constructed, we only got the set list. I mean, Robert keeps people on edge, and I like this. We only got the set list fully like an hour before, properly, like locked down before the show went on. It's a thing that Robert likes to do. I think it keeps everyone on edge. And one of the things I loved about how he constructed the show is we got every Cure song you could possibly want for, I think, amazing, song after song. And so what I wanted to do I wanted to not be clever with the way I filmed it. I wanted it to be very simple and to concentrate on the band and to create an amazing atmosphere. And occasionally I just wanted to step in because, this audience is brilliant because they get it if I do various things. So, for example, The Walk, I used some editing styles which were very similar to when I made the Walk video in 1982. So this audience gets that stuff. And so I think there are little winks to the audience throughout. And I wanted to add, because it's all big and posh and 4K and mixed in 5.1 at Abbey Road, where the Beatles recorded. And I wanted to add a little bit of Cure cheapness in there, just a little bit. So occasionally I distorted the image. And I wanted the audience to think, oh, is that really happening or am I imagining it? It depends what state you're in, I guess, when you're watching it.
Tim, when you mentioned there's little looks between them, that is exactly right. I mean, there was this moment when Roger is watching Robert start a new song that it melted my heart. I mean, he was just looking at Robert with such love. And this is the thing about the show is that it's their 40th anniversary. They got the most beautiful light. There was so much joy on stage, but you could have got the worst Cure concert of all time. You didn't know. There's no script. This isn't, a biopic or a movie. Like, this is a live concert. Would you say, having seen many Cure shows over the years, this was one of the best you'd seen and got to capture?
Absolutely, because I would have been really miffed had I been there. I mean, I was originally going to show. Robert always invites me to the shows, and I was going to be there as a guest. I would have been well pissed off had I been stood there seeing the show. I saw Robert afterwards. He knew that it was his best vocal performance in years, and he knew that. So that's all I can say on that, really.
Well, your film made me wish I had been there, and there were days leading up to the show that my husband kept saying, let's just jump on a plane and go. And watching your film, I hate that I didn't listen to him, because it seems like it was epic.
It was epic at many levels. It was kind of an emotional show, and you're right about those little looks. In fact, I asked Robert about that moment. I know the one. It's the beginning of a forest where Robert's going gadang, gadang, gadang. If everyone, you come on, all sing along, and and then Roger comes in. The big deep note that we know, and he said, that is a moment where they never quite get it right. They're kind of playing off of each other. And I want people to understand that is, and I cannot stress this enough, this band are actually playing this stuff. This is not tapes or recordings. It's quite extraordinary they achieved this sound. And hopefully with what you said about your husband, and I hope what people experience with this film, because I was very keen to make it feel very cinematic. We shot it in 4K, and if people know what that means, it's like twice the amount of information you need for a cinema picture. And I think the band were slightly reticent about that. Robert for sure was like, we don't want to be seen in 4K, because we're all older people now. And I said to him, no, we have to shoot it in 4K, because we have to capture the epic quality of your show. So hopefully, I know you didn't go to the show, but hopefully what this will do, I told you that I sat in this very special seat next to Jason and, next to Robert, and hopefully you get to see, although you didn't get to see the real show, what I tried to do here was to show you almost a different version of it, what you don't get to see. You don't get to see what's happening in Robert's eyes during, and I used big close-ups. The camera, some people have said the film is very straight. I'm not ashamed of that. I wanted to step out of the way and to show and to put us inside the band's music. That's what I wanted to do. Very simple.
Oh, the look on Robert's face speaking of a forest at the end when Simon is playing the final bass notes, he's like elated. He's elated. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but because he knows he's done to a good one. And funny enough, throughout the show, and I've got to tell you another story in a moment, but throughout the show, I was speaking to cameramen on headphones, and I was running it like a radio show, because I was essentially saying to the camera guys, Robert's enjoying this one, because, people weren't necessarily going to see this show, because I had a T-shirt. I have to, because when people see me around, they go, oh my God, when are we going to see it? So I had a T-shirt printed up which said, yes, I'm filming the show. No, I don't when you'll see it. Don't even ask. And the reason I had to, and it went all over Twitter, thank goodness. Otherwise I get thousands of people asking me for months and months, and it gets quite boring. So, we shot the show on the basis that maybe it wouldn't get shown, and I'm thrilled that it has done, because Robert was pleased with, Robert would not, nor the band would have put it out had they not been happy with the performance. But I've got to tell you one thing, how seat of the pants this was, because with all Cure stuff, like all the videos I made in the 80s, you only got to asked to do them like about 3 days before. This was no different. Robert wrote to me, the email came at 1:30 in the morning, fancy filming us at Hyde Park, it starts like that, doesn't it always, Because of the way we were doing it, I had to get all my cameras in, and they were these special cameras, 20 minutes before the band were to be on stage. And I have to say, I looked at my monitors, which were not all set up, and the band was standing at the side of the stage, and I only had about 2 monitors in the little truck I was working in, because you work, as a director, you work off TV monitors. And so the first 4 songs, I thought I could really freak out here, because I can't see any of the cameras. So I closed my eyes, and I imagined what the cameras were filming, and I directed the cameras like Braille, like I was a blind person. So that was good fun.
Wow. Tim, if you could hang on one sec. We have so many more questions for you. We have to take a quick commercial break.
Sure.
We'll be right back with legendary director and director of quality films, Tim Pope, on Feedback. amazing. It's like The Cure turned Hyde Park in the UK into a cathedral. Sirius XM 106, it is Volume, Feedback. Nick Carter, Lori Majewski. We are graced by the presence of Tim Pope, director of The Cure Anniversary 1978 to 2018, live in Hyde Park, or as Tim puts it, Anniversary. Which is awesome. You touched on this a little bit before we took a break, Tim, about mixing it in Abbey Road, because the first thing I thought was, I was like, he must have been so meticulous about the mix on this, because it is pristine, even through my computer speakers. I mean, they're high-end with a woofer, but they're still computer speakers. Can you talk about that process a little bit, just to make this music sound the way it sounded?
Well, I think the first thing to say is the band are actually playing it like that. Genuinely, they are playing it like that. Robert and the band take a lot of care. You know, I mean, I've been around Robert when he's mixing stuff, and you know, it's a couple of decibels down this, and you know, he's got an amazingly precise ear. And so I think the first thing is they are playing it, and you can't fake that. And secondly, he is singing it like that. So everything you're saying is true. Yes, it's mixed in a pristine fashion in the best place we could ever mix in. So I took a lot of care, given that the product itself, what we were actually mixing, was originally fantastic. It then was mixed in the best possible way that you could. And one of the things that Robert and I listened to when we heard it was, we really wanted to mix it in this thing called 5.1, which I think people know, which is in surround sound. And so we really wanted to Robert talked to me about wanting to put the audience like 10 rows back. So you got the most epic sound, if you like. And so there was a lot of care taken with the sound, as there was with the visuals. And he spent a lot of time doing it. But as I say, the truth of what they played and his voice is real. For example, there's a bit because a lot of people have said to me, oh, did he dub bits? No, he didn't. I can tell you. There's a bit in The Walk where, for whatever reason, I don't think he misses it, but the sound doesn't fade up, and it's in the film. Good on Robert for leaving it in there. I said to him, oh, well, of course you'll revoice that bit. He was like, no, and it's there, so it's great.
You know what I wanted to ask is, so you've been working with The Cure for 37 years, and we know Robert is ultra particular. How did you come to really form that bond with Robert in the first place? Like, I was thinking about I guess it's like late 82, or when you first like start collaborating, and that's when it's a year into MTV. It's really important to have music videos at that point. And The Cure didn't have the greatest videos yet. Like, I wonder if he needed to up the ante, and he was like, I need this guy. But how did you form that friendship?
Do you know, I think sometimes things just happen. I just was in the right time. I was the right bloke at the right place. Do you know what I mean? And at the right place in The Cure's sort of history. So when I first met Robert, it was only a two-piece band. And I remember my first meeting. I'm speaking to you from London London and near to Soho. And that was the first place I ever met Robert, on a rooftop. We went and sat and talked. And if I'd known then I'd be talking about it 37 years later, I probably would have been very surprised, as he says himself in the show about his own performance. I don't know, I was in the right time at the right place. There was a change of mood in The Cure. I think they've been through a lot of dark stuff. And then suddenly they recorded Let's Go to Bed. And I was the right person to come along and sort of do that. And we kind of gelled. I also think the way I was, a lot of video directors were kind of like ex-BBC types in those days, quite staid individuals. And then I walked into the room, and in those days particularly, I was very thin. I had eyes which didn't completely match. They're much better, you'll be pleased to know, these days. I wore mad shirts and everything, and he always talks about how he met me and thought, oh my God, I've got to work with this guy. So I think it was just time and place, really, you know?
Well, but you had, early on too, like, it seems like you and Robert seemed to want to make the other band members as uncomfortable as possible. You know, I talked to some of them about the ridiculous costumes that you make, and you make them wear in Why Can't I Be You. You've crammed them into that wardrobe for Close to Me. It's like you and Robert were sadistic about it.
Laura, you're suggesting I'm sadistic, are you? Well, I know there has always been a little bit of that. Spraying Robert's hair with like glue, liquid glue, to achieve a spider web and things like that. There was always a physical aspect to our videos, which I think made them very endearing. And I guess I wasn't intentionally sadistic, but there was a sense of every time Robert would arrive on set, he'd like raise his eyes, oh God, here we go again, kind of thing. What tricks has he got up his sleeve? Next thing you know, he's being sucked into a large spider's mouth, a big furry spider's. Hey, but who gives you lines like this? I feel like I'm being eaten by 1,000 million shivering furry holes. You don't get lines like you don't get given lines like that every day of the week. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I've got to film him being sucked into what may or may not be a large spider's mouth.
Well, it's interesting. You just mentioned that.
I like this. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. You were just mentioning that you had next to no time to get ready. Hyde Park, I mean, it looked like there was, 250,000 people there? Do you have any idea how many people were in attendance?
Yeah, it wasn't that many. It was 65,000 people. I just made it look like 250,000 people.
Yeah, there you go.
Through my cinematic powers.
So knowing how meticulous Robert is about the product, and, which is funny that he's going to be so meticulous, but he's literally going to call you at the 11th hour and say, hey, fancy shooting this show. How did you get it together that quickly in terms of a crew, or do you just have a crew on standby because Robert might call?
No. We have amazing teams of people, and Robert knows that one of the things I like to do is to work without a safety net. A lot of people, when they film concerts, they make them perfect. They film them across 5 nights in 5 different cities, and the bands sort of repeat what they're doing. In this instance, we had 1 night to get it, and I had 1 night. That's all I had, and I love that, and he knows that I love that because it's dangerous and it's real, and that is so much of what The Cure is about, being dangerous and real, and I think that's why we all still love them. They've never wavered in any way from the truth. They've never been untruthful to themselves. They won't do stuff because, like at Glastonbury, everyone was saying, which they played the other day, everyone's saying their performance was amazing. Why? Because they actually just played. A lot of people brought on dancers. I'm not criticising them, but The Cure do what The Cure do, and part of what they do is to be dangerous and to be real, and I was there to capture that, and he knows that I love working without a safety net. And yes, he does concentrate on details. He'll be hearing this, right? So I have to be careful what I say. He focuses on quite a few small points quite often, and they become quite nagging to him. And that's the way we work, if you like. There will be several things in something that piss him off a lot, so we then work on those.
Well, this film, Anniversary, is coming to theaters July 11th here in the United States, and they've added a few dates, so if you're listening to this, definitely look it up. I wonder, Tim, if you from the beginning knew it was going to be a theatrical release, because I mean, we had to see it on our computers so that way we can speak to you today, but I am going to be seeing this on the big screen. But I wondered sometimes...
I love you. That's great.
But sometimes when you do these things, it's almost an afterthought, like, oh, this came out so well, we want to put it on the big screen. Did you film it knowing it was going to be a theatrical release?
I filmed it knowing that, but I didn't tell anyone else. And when I was in my little truck, my little air-conditioned truck, I put tape over the monitors so I could shoot it like in LCD format, in widescreen. So this was very conscious. But as I say to you, I said to you, we didn't know if people were going to see this, because had the performance not been what Robert wanted, we would not be seeing this. But what I would say to people is, I know, this. It's amazing technology. When we made The Cure in Orange, it cost us like 10,000 quid to make one print or something. So it got seen in a few cinemas. What is amazing with technology these days, and says a lot about the reach of The Cure, this film, apart from the States, where I think it's in 350 cinemas from coast to coast, I think it's in 15 cinemas. You guys are in New York, aren't you?
Yes.
So, yeah. I think it's like in 15 cinemas, and it's across the entire States. But also, it will be playing that day in Iceland, in Hawaii, in Tokyo, the Czech Republic, Tasmania. Do I need to go on? It's just amazing. And what I would urge people to doing, and what I'm doing, and why I'm doing, because I don't talk about The Cure, because it gets quite boring, frankly, because people ask me about it a lot. But I'm willing to do it at the moment because I want people to see this film on the big screen, and people will miss out if they do not. And thank you for saying you will see it on the big screen, because that's what its intention is, that people see, and they will have an immersive experience. They will find themselves being lost in the story, and that's because it has a cinematic quality. It genuinely does.
I'm going to the theatre too. Do I not get any love then?
Well, what you're going to see? Bloody what's that film again? Mary Poppins.
Well,
you should get the part in Mary Poppins 3.
well,
I think you'd be great. Listen, maybe I could make it and you could be in it.
Well, before
I like it. You do a very fantastic Dick Van Dyke. Really, that is one of the best Dick Van Dykes I've ever heard.
Thanks, mate. So before we lose you, it's funny because talking about The Cure, there are those who say they're not as political, but speaking of close-ups, during his solo during A Forest, there's a Citizen Not Subject sticker on his guitar. Is that a not so subtle swipe at the monarchy he was taking?
I think, Robert, you need to get Robert back on. He'll be hearing this and he'll want to come on and correct me, doubtless, like you did Roger. So I would let Robert hear this and you bring him on to talk about that stuff. I don't want to be his mouthpiece for that stuff. I mean, listen, Robert's an older guy. I think, like most people, when you become older, by necessity, you become more political. And I think Robert is a more political beast than we would know him to be. I mean, everyone over here is going over this dreadful thing of having to leave Europe, which no one I know wants to do, But anyway,
it would be interesting to see Robert and Morrissey take each other on now.
What's that?
I said it would be interesting to see Robert and Morrissey take each other on now.
Like
I've heard about. I don't think Robert gives. I don't think he cares about that. I've heard about this fight. I think he's got much bigger.
Well, no, I just mean their political takes right now. It's so
wild.
I
see what you mean, because Morrissey's supposed to be a little bit supporting some dubious things, isn't he? I mean, God, I shouldn't say it, but I don't really like the Smiths. I mean, I used to be very friendly with... Is that sinful? But I used to be very friendly with Johnny Marr, actually, because I did a lot of work with and he and Johnny played, so we worked a lot together. Shot some amazing films in New York, actually, in your lovely city.
Yeah, those Mind Bomb videos were amazing, so good on you,
Yeah,
sir.
well, I did all those, and ones after as well. So.
Well, Tim, I really want to talk to you some more. We have to go, but I want to talk about the Sex Dwarf video, Bowie, Iggy Pop, Neil Young. Can we talk to you again? I know you don't do a lot of press, but please, and if you're in New York, come visit us.
Yeah, and come to New York because...
I'm desperate to come back to New York. I've got to have a reason to come back, though. That's what I've got to do. But
well,
now
you have one, and people don't really consider us the press either, so,
Sorry, I've just got to share one thing with you before I go. You're missing a whole visual thing here. So I found myself in a room. I tried to be sensible because I knew this was a radio interview and I knew it was live. And at the moment, the most bizarre sight, I'm sitting in this big room, which was quite echoey, and I have a jumper over my head.
Feedback with Nick Carter and Lori Majewski. Adult tested, kid approved.
First of all, I just want to say thanks for putting on such a great show every morning in my 9